You're living like a civilian. Soft, undisciplined, reactive. Your mind does what it wants. Your emotions control your actions. Your need for comfort determines your choices. And you wonder why you never achieve anything meaningful. You wonder why you give up when things get tough. You wonder why others seem to move forward while you collapse at the first obstacle. You wonder why you can't achieve your goals and dreams. The difference isn't talent. The difference isn't luck. The difference is mental discipline. The military understands something civilians never learn. Your mind is your greatest weapon or your worst enemy. And right now, your mind is your enemy. It's sabotaging you every day. But that ends today. This audiobook will teach you how to train your mind like a soldier, to think like a warrior, to focus as if your life depended on it, to act when necessary, regardless of how you feel. Stop living like a civilian. Start thinking like a soldier. Chapter 1. The civilian mind is killing you. You are soft. You do not want to hear that. You do not want to believe it. But it is true. Your mind has been conditioned by modern life to avoid discomfort, to seek ease, to prioritize feeling good over being good. And that softness is killing you. Not physically, something worse. It is killing your potential, your capability, your chance at becoming who you could actually be. The civilian mind you carry around is sabotaging every goal you set, every commitment you make, every opportunity you encounter. And you do not even recognize it as the enemy because it feels like you, but is not you. It is programming. Programming that must be eliminated. Here is what you need to understand. Modern society has created an epidemic of mental softness. Generations of comfort optimization have produced minds that cannot tolerate discomfort, cannot delay gratification, cannot push through resistance, cannot do hard things when hard things are required. The average person today has more physical comfort than royalty enjoyed centuries ago. Climate control, instant entertainment, food delivered to their door, every friction removed, every inconvenience eliminated. And the result is not happiness. The result is weakness. The result is minds that collapse at the first sign of difficulty. That is the key. Comfort is the enemy of capability. Every comfort you add weakens the mental muscle required to function without it. Every ease you embrace atrophies the capacity to endure difficulty. Every discomfort you avoid trains your mind that discomfort is unacceptable. And a mind that cannot accept discomfort cannot achieve anything worth achieving. Because everything worth achieving requires discomfort. Everything meaningful demands difficulty. Everything significant involves suffering you must push through rather than escape from. Think about your own mind. Think honestly. What happens when you feel uncomfortable? What happens when a task is difficult? What happens when the path forward requires suffering? If you're like most people, you retreat. You distract. You find an easier path. You tell yourself you will do it later when conditions are better, when you feel more motivated, when the timing is right. But the timing is never right. The conditions never improve. The motivation never arrives. Because these are not real barriers. These are symptoms of the civilian mind. Symptoms of softness that has been programmed so deeply you mistake it for wisdom. You have a choice. Continue operating with the civilian mind and continue getting civilian results. Or recognize the programming for what it is and begin the reprogramming that transforms you into something stronger. The choice is real. The consequences are real. And the choice you make determines everything about what your life becomes. Here are the symptoms of the civilian mind. Recognize them in yourself, because you cannot fix what you refuse to see. The alarm sounds in the morning. The civilian mind negotiates. Maybe 5 more minutes. Maybe I need more sleep. Maybe today is not the day to start. The soldier mind does not negotiate. The alarm is an order. Orders are executed. not because it feels good, because that is what discipline means. Your response to the alarm is a daily diagnosis of which mind controls you. A goal becomes difficult. The civilian mind reconsiders. Maybe this goal was not right for me. Maybe I should try something else. Maybe the obstacles are signs I should quit. The soldier mind does not reconsider based on difficulty. Difficulty is expected. Resistance is anticipated. The mission was set. The mission will be completed. Your response to difficulty reveals which mind is running the operation. Motivation disappears. The civilian mind waits. I will continue when I feel motivated again. I cannot force myself to do what I do not feel like doing. Action without motivation is unsustainable. The soldier mind does not wait for motivation. Motivation is irrelevant to mission execution. You act because action is required, not because action feels appealing. Your relationship to motivation exposes which mind commands you. Entertainment competes with effort. The civilian mind chooses entertainment. I deserve to relax. I have worked hard enough. I will start tomorrow with fresh energy. The soldier mind recognizes the enemy. Distraction is sabotage. Comfort-seeking is weakness in disguise. The mission is not complete. Entertainment can wait. Your choice between ease and effort identifies which mind holds power. That is the key. The civilian mind has been programmed to prioritize comfort over capability, feelings over function, ease over excellence, and that programming produces predictable results. Softness, weakness, unrealized potential, abandoned goals, a life smaller than it should have been because the mind controlling it could not tolerate what growth required. It is not about being cruel to yourself. It is not about self-punishment. It is about recognizing that the civilian mind is not serving you. Its protective instincts made sense in survival contexts. Conserve energy. Avoid threat. Seek safety. But you're not surviving. You're supposed to be thriving. And the programming designed for survival actively prevents thriving. The comfort the civilian mind seeks is the exact opposite of what achievement demands. Here is the warrior alternative. Soldiers do not operate on motivation. They operate on discipline. There is no discussion in basic training about whether recruits feel like running. They run. There is no negotiation about whether the mission feels appealing. The mission is executed. Feelings are irrelevant to function. Emotions are noted and then overridden. The mission determines action, not the mood. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming ungoverned by emotion. Soldiers feel fear. They act anyway. Soldiers feel fatigue. They continue anyway. Soldiers feel doubt. They execute anyway. The feeling is acknowledged. The feeling is not obeyed. That is the fundamental shift. From emotional obedience to emotional awareness combined with disciplined action. You have a choice. Continue letting feelings dictate function, or start letting discipline override feelings when feelings conflict with objectives. One path keeps you soft, keeps you comfortable, keeps you exactly where you are. The other path is harder. It requires building mental muscle you currently lack. It requires tolerating discomfort you currently avoid. But it leads somewhere the civilian path can never reach. Consider what the civilian mind has cost you already. The goals abandoned because difficulty arrived. The commitments broken because motivation faded. The potential unrealized because comfort was chosen over capability. The person you could have become, but did not because the civilian mind kept choosing the easy path. That cost is real. That cost is permanent. Every day the civilian mind controls you is another day of cost accumulating. The soldier mind does not guarantee success, but it guarantees you will not sabotage yourself. It guarantees you will show up when showing up is required. It guarantees you will push through when pushing through is the only path forward. It guarantees that if you fail having actually tried, not having quit at the first discomfort, not having retreated at the first difficulty, not having surrendered to softness before the battle even began. That is the key. The civilian mind is killing your potential before it has a chance to develop. It is protecting you from discomfort by preventing you from growth. It is keeping you safe by keeping you small. And you have been listening to it your entire life, mistaking its voice for wisdom when it is actually weakness in disguise. This book is about replacing that voice, about installing new programming, about training your mind to operate like a soldier instead of a civilian. Not because military life is superior, because military mental discipline produces results that civilian mental softness never can. The principles translate. The training adapts. The transformation is available to anyone willing to do the work. But understanding the problem is only the first step. The next step is understanding how the civilian mind actually controls you. Through the false belief that your feelings are commands that must be obeyed. They are not. Your feelings are not commands. Chapter 2. Your feelings are not commands. You have been lied to your entire life. The lie is simple. The lie is pervasive. The lie has controlled your every action. The lie is this. Your feelings are commands that must be obeyed. You feel tired, so you must rest. You feel afraid, so you must retreat. You feel unmotivated, so you must stop. You feel uncomfortable, so you must escape. Every feeling that arises becomes an order you follow without question. And this automatic obedience to emotion is the primary mechanism keeping you weak. Your feelings are not commands. Your feelings are information. And information can be noted, evaluated, and overridden. But you have never learned to do this. So your feelings run your life while you pretend you are in control. Here is what you need to understand. The civilian mind treats emotions as authorities, as masters to be served, as signals that dictate mandatory responses. Tired means stop. Afraid means flee. Unmotivated means quit. Uncomfortable means escape. There is no gap between feeling and response. No space for evaluation. No room for override. The emotion arises and the obedience follows automatically, instantly, without question. And this automatic obedience has been normalized, has been encouraged, has been called emotional intelligence when it is actually emotional slavery. That is the key. Feel it. Do not obey it. This is the warrior principle that separates those who achieve from those who merely wish. The soldier feels fear before combat. The fear is real. The fear is valid. The fear is noted. And then the soldier advances anyway. Because the mission is not determined by the emotion. The mission exists independent of how anyone feels about it. The mission will be executed. Feelings are irrelevant to that execution. Think about what happens in your mind when an emotion arises. You feel tired. What happens next? For most people, the sequence is automatic. Feel tired. Conclude rest is required. Stop working. The feeling created the conclusion. The conclusion created the action. There was no evaluation. No consideration of whether rest was actually required or merely desired. No assessment of whether the tiredness was genuine exhaustion or merely discomfort with effort. The feeling commanded. You obeyed. You have a choice. Continue obeying every emotion that arises and remain controlled by forces you do not direct. Or learn to create space between feeling and response, using that space to choose actions aligned with objectives rather than feelings. One path keeps you enslaved to emotional weather. The other path makes you the commander of your own behavior regardless of internal conditions. Here is how soldiers handle fear. They do not pretend they are not afraid. Pretending is delusion. Delusion is weakness. They acknowledge the fear fully. They feel it in their bodies. They recognize it in their minds. And then they act according to the mission anyway. The fear does not disappear. The fear is simply not obeyed. It provides information. Danger may be present. Caution may be warranted. But the information is evaluated against the mission. And if the mission requires advancing despite fear, they advance despite fear. This is not suppression. Suppression is pretending the emotion does not exist. That creates psychological damage. That creates eventual breakdown. This is acknowledgement without obedience. The emotion exists. The emotion is felt. The emotion is not obeyed. There's a difference, a critical difference that most people never learn because they never separate the feeling from the response. Consider fatigue. A soldier on a long march feels exhausted. The exhaustion is real. The body is communicating genuine information, and the soldier notes that information, evaluates it. Is this exhaustion indicating actual physical danger? Is continuing risking genuine damage? Or is this exhaustion simply discomfort? Simply the body preferring to stop? Simply the civilian mind seeking escape from difficulty? Most of the time, the exhaustion is not danger. It is discomfort, and discomfort is not a reason to stop. Discomfort is the feeling of growth. Discomfort is the sensation of capability being built. Discomfort must be pushed through, not obeyed. That is the key. Most of what you interpret as signals to stop are actually signals that you are doing something meaningful. Comfort does not produce growth. Ease does not build capability. The discomfort you flee from is the exact environment in which strength is developed. Every time you obey the feeling to stop, you prevent the adaptation that would have occurred if you continued. It is not about ignoring your body completely. It is not about pushing through genuine injury. It is about developing the discernment to know the difference between damage and discomfort, between signals that require cessation and signals that merely request it. The civilian mind treats every discomfort as damage. The soldier mind evaluates accurately and responds appropriately. Learning this discernment is essential to mental discipline. Here is the protocol for emotional override. First, recognize the emotion when it arises. Name it specifically. I'm feeling tired. I am feeling afraid. I am feeling unmotivated. I am feeling uncomfortable. The naming creates separation. You are not the emotion. You are the one observing the emotion. This separation is the first crack in emotional slavery. Second, evaluate the emotion against your objective. What is your mission? What are you trying to accomplish? Does the emotion provide information relevant to that mission? Does the emotion indicate genuine danger or merely discomfort? Does obeying the emotion serve the objective or sabotage it? This evaluation prevents automatic obedience. It inserts conscious choice into what was previously unconscious reaction. Chapter 3. Discipline is a daily war. You think discipline is something you achieve once. You think you reach a point where discipline becomes automatic, where the battle is won permanently, where you no longer have to fight. But you are wrong. Discipline is not a destination. Discipline is not a permanent state you arrive at and maintain effortlessly. Discipline is a daily war, a war you must fight every single morning, a war against the part of you that wants comfort, ease, and escape. And if you do not understand this, if you expect discipline to become effortless, you will be defeated the moment the fight gets hard, because you were not prepared for the war to continue. Here is what you need to understand. Every morning you wake up, the battle begins again. Your undisciplined self did not disappear while you slept. It rested. It recovered. It prepared for another assault on your objectives. And when the alarm sounds, the first attack comes. Stay in bed. You deserve more rest. Today is not important. Start tomorrow. This is not a random thought. This is enemy action. This is the undisciplined self launching its first offensive of the day. And how you respond to that first attack determines everything. That is the key. Win the day or lose the day. There is no neutral. Every day is either a victory for discipline or a victory for weakness. There is no middle ground. There is no holding pattern. You're either advancing or retreating, building discipline or eroding it, strengthening the soldier mind or feeding the civilian mind. The war does not pause. The war does not take breaks. The war continues every single day, whether you acknowledge it or not. Think about your mornings. What happens when consciousness returns? What happens in those first moments of awareness? For most people, the battle is lost before they even recognize it has begun. The alarm sounds. Negotiation starts. The civilian mind offers compelling arguments for delay. And before any conscious choice is made, the snooze button is pressed. The day starts with defeat. And a day that starts with defeat rarely recovers. You have a choice. Accept that discipline is a daily war and prepare accordingly. Or continue believing discipline should be effortless and remain perpetually defeated by an enemy you refuse to acknowledge. One approach is realistic. Difficult but realistic. The other approach is fantasy. Comfortable fantasy that produces permanent failure. Here is the enemy within explained. Your undisciplined self is not a separate entity. It is part of you. It is the part that evolved for survival in different conditions. The part that conserves energy when possible. The part that avoids discomfort instinctively. The part that seeks immediate reward over delayed benefit. This part of you has been operating for millions of years. It is sophisticated. It is persistent. It is patient. And it does not disappear because you read a book or decided to change. The undisciplined self waits for weakness. It attacks when you are tired, when you are stressed, when you're distracted, when your guard is down. It knows your vulnerabilities because it is part of you. It knows exactly what arguments will be most compelling, exactly what justifications will seem most reasonable, exactly what excuses you will accept. And it deploys these weapons strategically, not randomly, strategically, at the moments when you are least able to resist. That is the key. The enemy knows you perfectly because the enemy is you. This is not an external threat you can avoid. This is an internal threat you must defeat repeatedly, daily, for the rest of your life. There is no final victory. There is only today's victory or today's defeat. Tomorrow the war begins again. It is not about hating yourself. It is not about internal warfare that destroys your peace. It is about recognizing reality. The reality that part of you does not want what you consciously want. Part of you will sabotage your goals. Part of you will undermine your commitments. And if you do not recognize this part, if you do not prepare for its attacks, if you do not develop strategies to defeat it, you will lose. Not because you are weak, because you are unprepared, because you expected discipline to be easy when discipline is war. Here are the enemy's tactics. Recognize them so you can counter them. Disguise laziness as rest. You need a break. You have been working hard. Rest is important for performance. These statements can be true, and the undisciplined self uses truth as camouflage. The question is not whether rest is sometimes important. The question is whether rest is required right now or whether rest is being used as escape. The enemy hides behind legitimate concepts to justify illegitimate retreat. Frame quitting as wisdom. This goal is not right for you. You should pivot to something better suited to your strengths. Knowing when to quit is intelligence. Again, these statements can be true. Sometimes quitting is wise. But the undisciplined self does not offer this advice when quitting is actually wise. It offers this advice when continuing is hard. The timing reveals the tactic. Wisdom does not consistently recommend quitting whenever difficulty arrives. Present comfort seeking as self-care. You deserve this. Taking care of yourself is important. You cannot pour from an empty cup. The language of self-care has been weaponized by the undisciplined self. Genuine self-care sometimes requires discipline, requires doing hard things that serve long-term well-being. But the undisciplined self only recommends self-care that feels good immediately, only suggests rest, pleasure, escape, never suggests discipline as self-care. That asymmetry reveals the deception. You have a choice. Continue falling for these tactics and remain perpetually defeated, or learn to recognize the enemy's strategies and develop counter-strategies that ensure victory. Recognition alone provides significant advantage. The tactic that works in shadows fails in light. See the disguises clearly and they lose their power. Here is the morning protocol that wins the war. The first hour of the day is the decisive battle. Win that hour and momentum shifts in your favor. Lose that hour and you spend the rest of the day fighting uphill. The morning is not just important. The morning is everything. First, eliminate negotiation at the alarm. The alarm sounds. You move. Immediately, before the undisciplined self can mount its attack, before arguments can form, before justifications can emerge. Movement precedes thought. By the time the civilian mind begins its assault, you're already standing, already moving. The battle is already won before the enemy engaged. This is not willpower. This is strategy. Remove the battlefield where you are weakest. Second, physical activation before mental engagement. Your body affects your mind. A body that is moving, active, alert creates a mind that is disciplined, focused, ready. Cold water on the face. Physical movement. Exercise if possible. The body leads and the mind follows. Activate the body and you arm the soldier mind for the battles ahead. Third, mission clarity before world engagement. Before you check messages. Before you consume news. Before you let the world's priorities invade your mind. Define your mission for the day. What must be accomplished? What is non-negotiable? What will constitute victory when you review this day tonight? This clarity becomes your compass. When the undisciplined self attacks later, you have defined objectives to reference. You have orders already issued. The mission is clear. Feelings are irrelevant. That is the key. The morning protocol does not guarantee an easy day. It guarantees a disciplined start. And a disciplined start creates momentum. Momentum that carries you through later battles when energy is lower and the enemy is stronger. When the morning and you have already won most of what matters. Consider what happens without this protocol. You wake slowly. You negotiate with the alarm. You check your phone before your feet touch the floor. You let the world's priorities become your priorities. You start the day reactive instead of proactive. Defensive instead of offensive. And by the time you realize the war has begun, you have already lost critical ground. Ground that is difficult to reclaim. Ground that often remains lost for the entire day. Here is the evening protocol that prepares tomorrow's victory. The war does not end when you sleep. The war pauses while you prepare for tomorrow. Before sleep, you review today's battles. Where did you win? Where did you lose? What tactics did the enemy use? What worked in response? What failed? This review is not self-judgment. This review is intelligence gathering. Understanding today's battles improves tomorrow's strategy. Then you prepare tomorrow's battlefield. Lay out what you need. Remove obstacles to morning movement. Make the disciplined path easier and the undisciplined path harder. Environmental design supports discipline. Use it. The soldier who prepares equipment before battle performs better than the soldier who scrambles when fighting starts. Prepare tonight. Execute tomorrow. You have a choice. Approach each day as a new war and prepare accordingly. Or approach each day assuming discipline will happen automatically. The first approach is demanding. It requires daily effort, daily preparation, daily fighting, but it produces daily victories. The second approach is easier. It requires nothing, and it produces nothing except consistent defeat. The civilian mind wants discipline to be easy, wants transformation to be permanent, wants the war to end so peace can begin. But the war does not end. The war is the price of capability. The war is what separates those who achieve from those who merely wish. Accept the war. Prepare for the war. Win the war daily. That is the only path to becoming who you want to be. You understand that discipline is a daily war. You understand that the enemy within never stops fighting. You understand that morning protocols win battles and evening protocols prepare victories. But understanding strategy is not enough. You must execute, and execution requires treating your own commands as what they are, orders that are not optional. Chapter 4. Orders are not optional. You break promises to yourself constantly, daily, without consequence, without accountability, without even recognizing what you're doing. You tell yourself you will wake up early. You do not. You tell yourself you will exercise. You skip it. You tell yourself you will finish the project. You abandon it. You tell yourself you will stop the bad habit. You continue it. Every promise you make to yourself is treated as a suggestion, a preference, a nice idea that can be discarded when inconvenient. And this constant self-betrayal is destroying your discipline, your self-respect, and your capacity to achieve anything meaningful. Here is what you need to understand. In the military, orders are not suggestions. Orders are not open for interpretation based on feelings. Orders are not negotiable based on circumstances. Orders are executed. Period. A soldier who disobeys orders faces consequences. Serious consequences. The system ensures compliance because compliance is essential to function. But when you give yourself an order, there is no external enforcement. No one punishes you for breaking promises to yourself. No one holds you accountable. And so you treat your own commands as optional, as suggestions you can follow when convenient and ignore when not. That is the key. You gave the order. Now execute. This principle transforms how you relate to your own commitments. When you tell yourself you will do something, that is not a wish. That is not a hope. That is an order issued by your commanding self to your executing self. And orders are not optional. Orders are not negotiable. Orders are not reconsidered when the executing self does not feel like complying. Think about how you treat promises to others versus promises to yourself. If you tell someone you will meet them at 7, you show up at 7. If you commit to delivering work by a deadline, you deliver by the deadline. If you give your word to another person, you keep it. Because there are consequences for breaking promises to others. Social consequences, professional consequences, relational consequences. But what happens when you break a promise to yourself? Nothing. No external consequence. No accountability. No one even knows. And so you break self-promises freely, casually, constantly, without recognizing that each broken promise is a wound to your self-respect that accumulates over time. You have a choice. Continue treating your own commitments as optional suggestions and remain someone who cannot trust themselves. Or start treating your own commands as binding orders and become someone whose word to themselves means something. One path leads to continued self-betrayal. The other path leads to self-respect built on demonstrated reliability. Here is why most self-promises fail. People make commitments to themselves the way they make wishes. Casually, without specificity, without genuine intention to comply. They say, I will get in shape. They say, I will be more productive. They say, I will stop wasting time. These are not commands. These are vague aspirations with no clear execution requirements. A soldier does not receive an order to do better. A soldier receives specific instructions. Be at this location at this time with this equipment prepared for this mission. Specificity enables compliance. Vagueness enables escape. The second reason self-promises fail is lack of consequences. When you break a promise to yourself, nothing happens. You experience no punishment, no loss, no pain. The behavior has no cost, and behavior without cost continues. The civilian mind recognizes this absence of consequences and exploits it. Why comply when non-compliance is free? Why follow through when abandonment carries no penalty? The calculation is rational. The outcome is devastating. That is the key. You must create consequences for self-disobedience, not external consequences imposed by others. Internal consequences you impose on yourself. A system of accountability where breaking your own orders costs something, where noncompliance is not free, where the civilian mind's calculation changes because the equation changes. It is not about self-punishment. It is not about cruelty toward yourself. It is about respect for your own commands, about creating a system where your word to yourself carries weight, where orders you issue are orders you follow, where the gap between intention and execution closes because non-execution is no longer costless. Here is the protocol for building unbreakable self-command. First, issue clear orders, not vague intentions. Clear, specific commands with defined parameters. Not I will exercise more. Instead, I will perform 30 minutes of physical training at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Not I will be more productive. Instead, I will complete the report by noon with no distractions during work blocks. The specificity removes ambiguity. The clarity enables assessment. Either you complied or you did not. There is no interpretation, no rationalization, no escape through vagueness. Second, treat the order as non-negotiable once issued. This is where most people fail. They issue the order and then immediately begin negotiating when execution time arrives. Maybe I could do it later. Maybe the conditions are not right. Maybe I should modify the order. No, the order was issued. The order stands. Negotiation after issuance is insubordination. The time for consideration was before the order was given. Once given, the only appropriate response is execution. Third, create accountability systems. Track your compliance. Record whether you followed through on your own commands. See clearly your success rate. Most people have no idea how often they break promises to themselves because they never track it. The tracking itself creates pressure, creates visibility, creates the feedback loop that enables improvement. What gets measured gets managed. Measure your self-command compliance. Fourth, implement consequences for non-compliance. These consequences should be significant enough to influence behavior, but not so severe they seem unreasonable. Perhaps non-compliance means an additional difficult task must be completed. Perhaps it means a pleasure is forfeited. Perhaps it means a confession of failure must be recorded. The specific consequence matters less than its existence. There must be a cost. Non-compliance must not be free. You have a choice. Implement this protocol and become someone who follows through on their own commands. Or continue operating without systems and remain someone who cannot trust their own word. The protocol requires effort, requires discipline, requires treating yourself with the seriousness you deserve. But the result is transformational. The result is self-respect built on demonstrated reliability. Consider what happens when you become someone who follows their own orders. First, your confidence increases. Not artificial confidence from positive thinking. Real confidence from demonstrated capability. You know you will do what you say because you have done what you said. Repeatedly. Consistently. The track record is undeniable, and confidence built on evidence is unshakable. Second, your goals become achievable. Goals are not achieved through single heroic efforts. Goals are achieved through consistent daily action, through showing up repeatedly, through following through when motivation fades. When you become someone who follows their own orders, that consistent daily action becomes reliable. The goal is broken into commands. The commands are executed. The goal is achieved, not through willpower, through systems, through self-command that actually works. Third, your identity shifts. You become someone whose word means something, even to yourself, especially to yourself. This identity shift affects everything. How you see yourself, how you approach challenges, how you relate to commitments. You are no longer someone who tries. You're someone who does, because your orders are not optional, because your commands are followed, because you have built a self you can rely on. That is the key. Self-trust is built through demonstrated reliability. You cannot think yourself into self-trust. You cannot affirm yourself into self-respect. You must earn it through action, through follow-through, through becoming someone who does what they say. Every order you follow builds that trust. Every order you break destroys it. The math is simple. The implications are profound. Here is what the soldier mind understands that the civilian mind does not. Discipline is not about feeling like complying. Discipline is about complying regardless of feeling. The soldier does not follow orders because following feels good. The soldier follows orders because that is what soldiers do. The feeling is irrelevant. The compliance is essential. This separation of feeling from function is what makes military discipline effective. And this same separation must be installed in your self-command system. When you issue yourself an order and execution time arrives, your feelings will have opinions. The civilian mind will offer arguments for noncompliance, for delay, for modification. And the question is simple. Are you a soldier or a civilian? Does your word to yourself mean something or does it mean nothing? Will you execute or will you negotiate? The answer you give in that moment is the answer that determines who you become. You have a choice, not just once. Every time you issue yourself a command and execution time arrives. Every time the civilian mind offers arguments for escape. Every time feelings suggest disobedience. In those moments, you choose who you are. You choose what your word means. You choose whether orders are optional or binding. Choose wisely. Choose repeatedly. Choose until the choice becomes automatic and execution becomes identity. It is not about perfection. You will fail sometimes. You will break orders occasionally. The goal is not flawless compliance. The goal is a system where compliance is expected, tracked, and continuously improved, where failures are examined and addressed, where the trajectory is toward greater self-command, even if individual days include setbacks. Progress over perfection. Systems over willpower. Trajectory over individual moments. You learn that orders are not optional. You learn that self-command requires clarity, commitment, accountability, and consequences. You learn that self-trust is built through demonstrated reliability. But there is an enemy to this entire system. An enemy that undermines every order before it can be executed. An enemy disguised as a friend. That enemy is comfort. Chapter 5. Comfort will destroy everything you want. You are addicted to comfort. You do not see it as addiction. You see it as normal, as reasonable, as what everyone does. But as addiction, your brain has been hijacked by the relentless pursuit of ease, by the constant avoidance of discomfort, by the systematic elimination of every friction from your life. And this addiction is destroying everything you want to achieve, every goal you set, every dream you hold, every version of yourself you wish to become. Comfort is killing all of it, slowly, pleasantly, with your full cooperation. Here is what you need to understand. The comfort paradox operates in your life constantly. You seek comfort to feel better, to be happier, to enjoy life more. But comfort is not making you better. Comfort is making you weaker. Every comfort you add reduces your capability to function without it. Every ease you embrace atrophies the mental muscle required to endure difficulty. Every discomfort you avoid trains your system that discomfort is unacceptable. And a system that cannot accept discomfort cannot achieve anything worth achieving. That is the key. Hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life. This is not motivational rhetoric. This is mechanical reality. When you choose the hard path now, you build capability that makes the future easier. When you choose the easy path now, you build weakness that makes the future harder. The choice is always the same. Pay now or pay later. But later charges interest. And the interest on avoided difficulty compounds devastatingly. Think about your current life. How many comforts have you added? How many discomforts have you eliminated? Air conditioning, so you never feel temperature discomfort. Food delivery, so you never endure hunger or inconvenience. Entertainment on demand, so you never experience boredom. Social media, so you never face solitude. Every friction removed. Every difficulty eliminated. Every discomfort escaped. And the result is not a better life. The result is a weaker you. A you who cannot function when conditions are not perfect. A you who collapses when comfort is unavailable. You have a choice. Continue adding comforts and removing discomforts until you cannot function without perfect conditions. Or start deliberately embracing difficulty to build the capability that makes you unstoppable regardless of conditions. One path leads to increasing fragility. The other path leads to increasing strength. The comfort path feels better today. The discomfort path creates better tomorrow. Choose. Here is how comfort addiction develops. It follows a predictable pattern that operates below conscious awareness. Stage 1. A comfort is introduced. Perhaps you start taking hot showers instead of cold. Perhaps you begin ordering food instead of preparing it. Perhaps you start avoiding difficult conversations. The comfort is adopted because it feels better than the alternative. Stage 2. The comfort becomes normal. What was once a luxury becomes a baseline. What was once appreciated becomes expected. The hot shower is no longer a pleasure. It is simply how showers work. The delivered food is no longer convenient. It is simply how meals arrive. The avoided conversations are no longer escape. They're simply how you operate. Stage 3. The absence of comfort becomes intolerable. Now you cannot take a cold shower. The thought creates resistance. Now you cannot prepare your own food. The effort seems unreasonable. Now you cannot have difficult conversations. The discomfort seems unacceptable. What was once optional has become required. What was once preference has become dependency. Stage 4. More comfort is required. Because the current level is now baseline, you need additional comfort to feel good. The hot shower must be hotter. The food delivery must be faster. The avoidance must be more complete. The addiction progresses. The dependency deepens. The capability erodes further. That is the key. Each comfort chosen raises the baseline. What was once luxury becomes necessity. What was once appreciated becomes expected, and you need more comfort just to feel normal. This is addiction mechanics. This is how dependency functions. And most people are deep in this cycle without recognizing they are addicted. It is not about rejecting all comfort. It is not about living in unnecessary misery. It is about recognizing the cost of each comfort added, about understanding that capability and comfort trade against each other, about deliberately maintaining exposure to difficulty so you do not lose the ability to handle difficulty. Strategic discomfort is not punishment. It is training. Training that maintains the mental muscle modern life is atrophying. Here is how soldiers train for combat. They do not train in comfortable conditions. They do not prepare for difficulty by avoiding difficulty. They train in conditions worse than they expect to encounter. They sleep less than they will need to. They eat less than they will want to. They endure more discomfort than combat typically requires. Why? Because training in difficulty builds capability for difficulty. Because comfort in training creates fragility in combat. Because the gap between training conditions and combat conditions determines performance when performance matters. This principle translates directly to civilian life. If you train only in comfortable conditions, you can perform only in comfortable conditions. If you never experience hunger, you cannot function when hungry. If you never experience cold, you cannot perform when cold. If you never experience difficulty, you collapse when difficulty arrives. And difficulty always arrives. Not on your schedule, not when you are prepared. Difficulty arrives when it arrives. And your training determines your response. You have a choice. Train in comfort and perform only in comfort. Or train in difficulty and perform regardless of conditions. The soldier trains for worst-case scenarios. The civilian trains for best-case scenarios. And reality usually falls between worst and best. The soldier is prepared. The civilian is overwhelmed. The difference is training. The difference is deliberate exposure to discomfort. Here is the deliberate discomfort protocol. These are practices that maintain and build your capability to function in difficulty. Cold exposure. Start your shower cold. Not the entire shower if that seems extreme. The last 30 seconds. Cold water. Uncomfortable water. Water your body does not want. This simple practice trains your system that discomfort is survivable, that you can function while uncomfortable, that your preferences do not control your behavior. 30 seconds of cold water daily builds mental muscle that transfers to every other difficult situation. Physical challenge. Maintain a practice of physical difficulty, not comfortable exercise. Challenging exercise. Exercise that makes you want to quit. Exercise that requires override of the civilian mind. This practice keeps the mental muscle active, keeps the capability for push-through functional. Most people exercise at comfort. They stop when discomfort begins. That trains nothing except the habit of stopping when things get hard. Voluntary deprivation. Periodically remove comforts you have become dependent upon. Skip a meal deliberately. Leave the phone at home. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Walk instead of drive. These small deprivations maintain your ability to function without the comforts you normally enjoy. They prevent dependency from deepening. They keep capabilities active that disuse would atrophy. Difficult task completion. Regularly take on tasks that are harder than necessary. Choose the challenging project. Have the uncomfortable conversation. Do the thing you've been avoiding because it is difficult. Each completion builds evidence that you can do hard things. Each completion strengthens the identity of someone who does not retreat from difficulty. That is the key. Deliberate discomfort is not punishment. It is preparation. It is training that maintains capabilities modern life is eliminating. It is investment in future function. Every discomfort embraced builds something. Every comfort chosen erodes something. The accounting is precise. The consequences are real. Choose with awareness. Consider what comfort addiction has already cost you. The goals abandoned because pursuing them was uncomfortable. The growth avoided because growing was difficult. The conversations never had because having them was hard. The capabilities never developed because developing them required discomfort. The person you could have become, but did not because becoming required difficulty you refused to embrace. This cost is real. This cost is permanent. and the cost continues accumulating every day you choose comfort over capability. Here is what the soldier understands that the civilian does not. Discomfort is the price of capability. There is no other way to pay. You cannot think your way to strength. You cannot wish your way to resilience. You cannot comfort your way to capability. You must endure discomfort. You must embrace difficulty. You must pay the price that capability demands. And the soldier pays willingly, because the soldier knows what that payment purchases. The civilian refuses to pay. The civilian seeks comfort and wonders why capability never develops. Wonders why goals remain unachieved. Wonders why others seem to push through while they collapse. The answer is not talent. The answer is not luck. The answer is payment. The others paid the discomfort price. The civilian refused. And capabilities that are not paid for are not received. You have a choice. Continue refusing to pay the discomfort price and remain incapable, or start paying willingly and watch capability develop. The payment is not pleasant. The payment is uncomfortable by definition, but the purchase is worth the price. Capability, strength, resilience, the ability to function when conditions are not perfect, the ability to push through when pushing through is required. These are worth the discomfort they cost. It is not about suffering for its own sake. It is not about making life unnecessarily hard. It is about strategic investment in capability, about recognizing that comfort and capability trade against each other, about choosing to maintain difficulty exposure so that difficulty does not defeat you when it arrives uninvited. This is wisdom. This is preparation. This is how warriors train while civilians soften. You learn that comfort is the enemy of capability. You learn that addiction to ease creates fragility. You learn that deliberate discomfort builds strength. But capability is not just about enduring discomfort. Capability is also about directing your force effectively, about focusing your attention like a weapon. Because a warrior who cannot focus is a warrior who cannot fight. Chapter 6. Focus is a weapon. Your attention is scattered, fragmented, dispersed across 100 different inputs, competing for your mental energy. Right now, as you listen to this, part of your mind is elsewhere, thinking about what you need to do later, wondering if you received a message, drifting toward concerns that have nothing to do with this moment. And this scattered attention is not a minor inconvenience. This scattered attention is destroying your capability. Because focus is not just a nice quality to have. Focus is a weapon, the most powerful weapon in the mental arsenal. And you have let yours rust into uselessness. Here is what you need to understand. Your attention is under constant attack. Every notification on your phone is an assault. Every social media platform is an enemy combatant fighting for your mental resources. Every advertisement, every clickbait headline, every ping and buzz and alert is designed to capture your attention and redirect it towards someone else's objectives. You're living on a battlefield where your attention is the territory everyone wants to conquer, and you have no defenses, no strategy, no awareness that a war is even being waged. You simply surrender your attention to whoever demands it loudest. That is the key. Where attention goes, results flow. This is not metaphor. This is mechanism. Whatever you focus on receives your mental energy, your processing power, your capability for action. When your attention is scattered across 100 inputs, your energy is divided 100 ways. Each input receives a fraction of your capability, and a fraction of capability produces a fraction of results. But when your attention is concentrated on a single objective, your full force is brought to bear, and full force produces full results. Think about your average day. How many times does your attention shift? How many different inputs compete for your focus? You start a task. A notification appears. Your attention shifts. You return to the task. A thought about something else intrudes. Your attention shifts again. You try to refocus. Someone messages you. Another shift. By the end of the day, your attention has shifted hundreds of times, perhaps thousands. And what have you accomplished? A fraction of what focused attention could have produced. Because scattered attention produces scattered results. You have a choice. Continue surrendering your attention to every demand and remain incapable of producing meaningful results. Or learn to wield focus as a weapon and become someone who accomplishes what others cannot. One path is passive. It requires nothing except continued surrender. The other path is active. It requires training, discipline, and the deliberate development of a capability most people have lost entirely. Here is how the military trains focus. Soldiers must maintain concentration in conditions designed to destroy it. They must remain vigilant during extended watches where nothing happens. They must complete monotonous tasks with precision despite boredom, screaming for distraction. They must focus on objectives while chaos erupts around them. These are not natural abilities. These are trained capabilities. Capabilities developed through systematic practice that civilians never undertake. Consider the sniper. Hours of motionless waiting. Environmental discomforts demanding attention. Physical needs requesting acknowledgement. Mental noise begging for engagement. And through all of it, focus must remain on the objective, on the target, on the mission. One moment of attention shift could mean mission failure, could mean death. The stakes enforce the focus, and the training builds the capability to maintain focus when stakes are high. You do not face life or death stakes, but the principle translates. Your ability to maintain focus on your objectives despite distractions determines your results. The civilian who cannot focus for 10 minutes cannot accomplish what requires concentrated effort. And everything worth accomplishing requires concentrated effort. The capability must be built. The weapon must be sharpened, or you remain unable to fight effectively in any arena. That is the key. Focus is a trained capability, not a natural gift. Some people have more natural attention capacity than others, but every person can train their focus beyond its current level. Every person can build mental muscle that extends concentration duration. Every person can develop the capability to direct attention deliberately rather than surrendering it to every demand. The training is available. The question is whether you will undertake it. It is not about never being distracted. It is not about perfect concentration at all times. It is about building the capability to focus when focus is required, about having the mental muscle available when the mission demands it, about being able to concentrate on an objective until the objective is achieved rather than scattering attention and achieving nothing. Here is why modern life has destroyed focus. Your brain evolved in an environment of scarcity. Information was rare. Novelty was rare. Stimulation was rare. And so the brain developed strong attraction to new information, novel situations, stimulating inputs. This made sense for survival. New information might indicate threat or opportunity. Attention to novelty was adaptive. But now you live in an environment of abundance. Information is infinite. Novelty is constant. Stimulation is relentless. And your ancient brain, designed for scarcity, is overwhelmed by abundance. Every notification triggers the novelty response. Every new input captures attention. Every stimulation demands engagement. Your brain is doing what it evolved to do. The problem is that what it evolved to do no longer serves you. The technology companies understand this. They have engineered their platforms to exploit your brain's novelty seeking, to trigger the attention capture mechanisms as frequently as possible, to make their products as addictive as possible. They have weaponized your own neurology against you. And you have no defense because you never developed one. You never trained your focus because you never recognized focus as a capability that requires training. You have a choice. Continue allowing your ancient brain to be exploited by modern technology, or train your focus deliberately until you can direct attention by choice rather than having it captured by design. One path keeps you exploited, keeps you scattered, keeps you incapable. The other path requires training, requires discipline, requires the systematic development of a capability, but leads to power, the power to focus your full force on objectives until they are achieved. Here is the focus training protocol. These practices build the mental muscle of concentration. Single task commitment periods. Choose a task. Set a timer. 20 minutes to start. During that time, you work on that task only. Not that task while checking messages. Not that task while monitoring notifications. That task only. When attention wanders, you notice and return it. When distraction beckons, you refuse and refocus. The timer is your commitment. Until it sounds, you are dedicated to this single objective. This practice builds the muscle of sustained attention through repetition. Distraction elimination before focus periods. Do not rely on willpower to resist distraction. Eliminate distraction before beginning. Phone in another room. Notifications disabled. Browser tabs closed. Environment cleared of attention-capturing elements. Make focus the path of least resistance by making distraction difficult to access. This is not weakness. This is strategy. The soldier does not invite the enemy into the command center and then try to ignore them. The soldier secures the perimeter first. Progressive duration extension. Start with what you can manage. Perhaps 10 minutes of focused work. Then extend. 15 minutes. 20. 30. Each extension builds capacity. Each successful period proves capability and enables the next increase. The goal is not immediate perfection. The goal is progressive development. The focus muscle strengthens through progressive overload, just like physical muscles. Attention recall practice. Throughout the day, practice noticing where your attention is and deliberately redirecting it. You catch yourself mindlessly scrolling. You notice. You redirect. You find your mind wandering during conversation. You notice. You return. Each notice and redirect is a repetition. Each repetition builds the muscle. The practice is constant because the opportunity is constant. Your attention wanders all day. Each wandering is a training opportunity. That is the key. Focus training is not a single practice. Focus training is a way of operating, a constant engagement with your own attention, a perpetual practice of noticing drift and returning to objective. Over time, this practice becomes habitual. The muscle becomes strong. The capability becomes reliable. And you become someone who can wield focus as a weapon. Consider what focused attention would make possible. The project that would take scattered attention a week could be completed in a day with concentrated focus. The skill that would take scattered practice a year could be developed in months with focused training. The goal that seems impossible to scattered effort becomes achievable with concentrated force. Focus is not just efficiency. Focus is capability multiplication. The same hours produce dramatically different results when attention is concentrated versus scattered. Here is what most people never realize. They think they are working when they are merely present. They sit at the desk. They have the materials. They spend the hours. But their attention is scattered. Their focus is fragmented. Their mental force is dispersed. And so the hours pass with minimal results. They blame the task for being difficult. They blame themselves for lacking talent. But the problem is neither difficulty nor talent. The problem is scattered attention producing scattered results. Concentrated attention would produce what scattered attention cannot. The soldier knows that presence is not performance. Being on the battlefield is not the same as fighting effectively. Having the weapon is not the same as wielding it skillfully. Focus is the difference between presence and performance, between having capability and deploying capability, between being there and actually fighting. You have a choice. Continue mistaking presence for performance and wonder why results never match effort. Or develop the focus that transforms presence into performance and watch results multiply. The training is available. The protocols are clear. The capability can be built. What remains is execution, daily practice, consistent training, progressive development of the mental muscle that makes everything else possible. It is not about becoming a machine. It is not about eliminating all spontaneity and flow. It is about having the capability when the mission requires it, about being able to deploy concentrated attention when concentration is needed, about not being helpless when focus is required because you never developed the capability to focus. The trained warrior can relax when relaxation is appropriate. But the trained warrior can also fight when fighting is required. Train the capability, then deploy it strategically. You learn that focus is a weapon. You learn that attention is a battlefield. You learn protocols for building concentration capability. But focus must be maintained through discomfort, through difficulty, through the pain that makes most people stop, and that requires understanding what pain actually is. Chapter 7. Pain is information, not instruction. You stop when it hurts. That is your pattern. That is your programming. That is the response that has been conditioned into you since childhood. Pain appears and you cease. Discomfort arrives and you retreat. The signal fires and you obey. You have never questioned this response. You have never examined whether stopping is actually required. You simply feel pain and interpret it as a command to stop. But pain is not a command. Pain is not an instruction you must follow. Pain is information, data your body is providing. And data can be evaluated, interpreted, and sometimes overridden. But you have never learned to do this. So pain controls you completely. Here is what you need to understand. Most people interpret pain as a stop sign. The body hurts, so they cease the activity. The mind resists, so they abandon the effort. The emotions protest, so they retreat from the challenge. This interpretation seems logical, seems reasonable, seems like what any sensible person would do. But this interpretation is wrong. Pain is not telling you to stop. Pain is telling you something is happening. What you do with that information is a separate decision. A decision you have been making automatically when it should be made consciously. That is the key. Pain is talking. You decide whether to listen. The pain provides information. You provide the interpretation. You provide the response. The pain itself has no authority. The pain itself issues no commands. The pain simply reports. And you have been treating every report as an order for retreat, when retreat is only one possible response among many. Think about what happens when you experience pain during effort. You are exercising. Muscles burn. Lungs protest. The body signals discomfort. And what happens next? For most people, the sequence is automatic. Pain equals stop. The signal fires and cessation follows without any conscious evaluation, without any assessment of what the pain actually indicates, without any decision about whether stopping serves the objective. The pain commanded. You obeyed. That was the entire process. You have a choice. Continue interpreting all pain as a stop command and remain limited by whatever discomfort you cannot tolerate. Or learn to evaluate pain as information and respond based on mission rather than sensation. One path keeps you controlled by every uncomfortable signal your body produces. The other path gives you authority over your own responses. One path is civilian. The other path is soldier. Here is the critical distinction you must understand. There is a difference between damage and discomfort, between pain that signals actual harm requiring cessation and pain that signals challenge requiring persistence. The civilian mind does not make this distinction. The civilian mind treats all discomfort as damage. Every uncomfortable signal becomes a reason to stop. Every pain becomes a threat requiring retreat. But this interpretation is inaccurate. And inaccurate interpretation produces inappropriate response. Damage pain signals that something is actually being harmed. That continuing will cause injury. That cessation is genuinely required to prevent lasting negative consequences. This pain should be heeded. This pain provides information that continuing is destructive. The soldier does not push through damage pain. The soldier recognizes when actual harm is occurring and responds appropriately. Discomfort pain signals that something challenging is happening. That effort is being expended. That the body is working beyond its comfort zone. But nothing is being damaged. Nothing is being harmed. The discomfort is simply the sensation of difficulty. The sensation of capability being built. The sensation of growth occurring. This pain should not stop you. This pain is the feeling of transformation, and retreating from it prevents the very adaptation you are seeking. That is the key. The soldier learns to distinguish damage from discomfort. The soldier develops the discernment to know when pain means stop and when pain means continue. The civilian makes no such distinction. The civilian retreats from all pain equally. An equal retreat from unequal signals produces dysfunction, produces weakness, produces incapability. It is not about ignoring your body. It is not about pushing through everything regardless of consequence. It is about accurate interpretation, about evaluating what the pain actually indicates rather than assuming all pain indicates the same thing. About developing the discernment that allows appropriate response instead of automatic retreat. Here is how to develop this discernment. Ask specific questions when pain arises. Is this pain sharp or dull? Sharp pain often indicates actual damage. Something tearing, something breaking, something wrong. Dull pain often indicates effort. Muscles working, systems straining. Discomfort without damage. The character of the pain provides information about its cause. Is this pain in a joint or in a muscle? Joint pain often indicates structural stress that could cause injury. Muscle pain often indicates effort that causes growth. The location of the pain provides information about its significance. Does this pain increase suddenly or gradually? Sudden increases often indicate something has gone wrong. Gradual increases often indicate progressive effort. The pattern of the pain provides information about its meaning. Does this pain feel like previous injury experiences or previous effort experiences? Your history provides context. You know what injury feels like. You know what effort feels like. The comparison helps distinguish the current signal. You have a choice. Develop this discernment through deliberate practice and gain control over your responses to pain. Or continue treating all pain identically and remain controlled by every uncomfortable sensation. The discernment is a skill. Skills are developed through practice. The practice is available. The question is whether you will undertake it. Here is what happens when you cannot distinguish damage from discomfort. You stop at every challenge. Every difficult task produces discomfort. Every meaningful effort creates uncomfortable sensations. If you interpret all discomfort as damage, you stop at every meaningful effort. You never push through. You never discover what is on the other side of difficulty. You remain permanently limited by whatever discomfort you cannot tolerate. Consider what this has cost you. The workout stopped when muscles burned, preventing the adaptation that would have made you stronger. The project abandoned when frustration arose, preventing the completion that would have moved you forward. The skill practice ended when difficulty increased, preventing the development that would have made you capable. Each retreat from discomfort prevented something. Each stop prevented growth. And the accumulated prevention has kept you smaller than you could have been. The soldier understands that most growth happens beyond the comfort zone. The burning muscles are building. The frustrating practice is developing. The difficult effort is creating capability. The discomfort is not the enemy of progress. The discomfort is the signature of progress, is the feeling of adaptation occurring. And retreating from that feeling prevents the adaptation it signals. That is the key. Discomfort often indicates you're doing exactly what you should be doing. The burn during exercise indicates muscles being challenged to grow. The frustration during learning indicates the brain being pushed to develop. The difficulty during effort indicates capability being expanded. These sensations are not stop signs. These sensations are progress markers. And interpreting them as stop signs is interpreting them incorrectly. It is not about seeking pain for its own sake. It is not about glorifying suffering. It is about accurate interpretation that allows appropriate response. About not stopping when stopping prevents progress. About continuing through discomfort that signals growth while still stopping when stopping prevents damage. The discernment is the key. Without it, you either stop at everything or push through everything. Neither extreme serves you. Discernment serves you. Here is the protocol for building pain tolerance. These practices expand the zone within which you can operate effectively. Physical training through discomfort. During exercise, practice continuing when discomfort recommends stopping. Not through injury. Through the muscle burn that signals effort. Through the lung protest that signals challenge. Through the body's preference for ease. Each continuation builds evidence that discomfort is survivable. That function is possible while uncomfortable. That the stop command can be evaluated rather than obeyed. Mental training through challenging tasks. Take on cognitive work that produces mental discomfort. Complex problems. Difficult learning. Extended concentration. When the mind protests, when frustration arises, when the brain recommends easier activities, continue. This builds mental pain tolerance. Proves that cognitive discomfort is not a reason to stop. Expands the zone of effective mental operation. Emotional training through difficult situations. Enter situations that produce emotional discomfort. Difficult conversations. Public speaking. Social challenges. When emotions protest, when anxiety arises, when the system recommends retreat, continue. This builds emotional pain tolerance. Proves that uncomfortable feelings do not require escape. Expands the zone of effective emotional operation. Progressive exposure. Start with manageable discomfort and increase gradually. Do not attempt to master pain tolerance immediately. Build it progressively. Each successful continuation at one level enables the next level. Each proof that discomfort can be tolerated builds confidence for greater discomfort. The expansion is gradual. The capability is built systematically. You have a choice. Build pain tolerance deliberately and expand your zone of effective operation. Or remain at current tolerance levels and remain limited by whatever discomfort you currently cannot tolerate. The building requires practice. Requires repeated exposure to discomfort. Requires continuing when the civilian mind recommends stopping. But the result is capability. The result is expanded function. The result is the ability to pursue objectives that require tolerance you currently lack. Consider what expanded pain tolerance would make possible. The fitness level that requires pushing through discomfort you currently escape. The skill level that requires tolerating frustration you currently avoid. The achievement that requires enduring difficulty you currently cannot handle. All of it becomes accessible when pain tolerance expands. All of it remains inaccessible while pain tolerance stays low. Here is what the soldier knows that the civilian does not. Pain tolerance is trainable. What is intolerable today can become tolerable through systematic exposure. What stops you now does not have to stop you forever. The limits you experience are not fixed. They are current, and current limits can be expanded through deliberate practice. The civilian assumes current limits are permanent, assumes what hurts now will always hurt the same, assumes pain tolerance is fixed rather than trainable. And this assumption prevents the training that would expand the limits. The assumption becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. You do not train because you believe you cannot improve, and you do not improve because you do not train. That is the key. Pain is information, not instruction. Pain provides data about what is happening. You provide the interpretation. You provide the response. The authority is yours. The decision is yours. Pain does not command. Pain reports, and you choose what to do with the report. It is not about ignoring all pain. It is about evaluating pain, about distinguishing damage from discomfort, about responding appropriately to each, about building tolerance for the discomfort that signals growth while heeding the damage that signals harm. This discernment is the skill. This discernment is what the soldier develops. This discernment is what you must develop to become someone who is not stopped by every uncomfortable sensation. You learn that pain is information, not instruction. You learn to distinguish damage from discomfort. You learn to build tolerance through progressive exposure. But there is another enemy that undermines all of this progress. An enemy that provides seemingly valid reasons to stop even when stopping is wrong. That enemy is the excuse. Chapter 8. Excuses are enemy intelligence. You are a master excuse maker. You do not see yourself this way. You see yourself as reasonable, as logical, as someone who simply recognizes valid reasons for not doing what you should do. But those reasons are not valid. Those reasons are not logic. Those reasons are excuses. And every excuse you make is a weapon being used against you. By you. Against you. The enemy is inside the gates. The enemy knows your vulnerabilities. The enemy crafts perfectly targeted justifications for retreat. And you accept these justifications as wisdom when they are actually sabotage. Here is what you need to understand. Every excuse you make is intelligence you provide to your enemy. Your undisciplined self is gathering data constantly, learning what arguments you accept, what justifications you believe, what reasons for retreat you find compelling. And it uses this intelligence to craft increasingly effective excuses. Excuses tailored specifically to you. Excuses that exploit your particular weaknesses. Excuses that seem so reasonable you do not recognize them as excuses at all. That is the key. Your excuses are not reasons. They are weapons used against you. This reframe is essential. As long as you see excuses as legitimate reasoning, you will continue accepting them. You will continue believing that your retreat is justified, that your quitting is wise, that your failure to act is reasonable given the circumstances. But once you recognize excuses as enemy operations, you can begin to counter them. You can see the attack for what it is. And seeing clearly is the first step to defending effectively. Think about your most recent excuse. The last time you did not do what you should have done. What reason did you give yourself? What justification did you accept? I was too tired. I did not have enough time. The conditions were not right. I will start tomorrow. Whatever the specific excuse, examine it now. Was it actually a valid reason? Or was it a weapon your undisciplined self used to prevent action? Was it genuine wisdom? Or was it sabotage disguised as wisdom? You have a choice. Continue accepting excuses as valid reasoning and remain permanently defeated by your own mind. Or start recognizing excuses as enemy attacks and develop the capability to reject them. One path keeps you sabotaged. The other path gives you a chance to fight. One path is comfortable. The other path is effective. Choose. Here are the common excuse patterns. Recognize them so you can counter them. The too tired excuse. This is the most frequent weapon. You know you should do something. The undisciplined self generates fatigue. Not always genuine exhaustion. Often manufactured tiredness designed to justify retreat. And you accept it. You tell yourself you need rest. You tell yourself you will do it when you have more energy. But the energy never comes. Because the tiredness was not real. It was tactical. It was an excuse generated to prevent action. And it worked. Examine this excuse when it appears. Are you genuinely exhausted to the point where function is impossible? Or are you simply tired in the way that effort always produces? The civilian mind treats all tiredness as genuine exhaustion. The soldier mind evaluates. Sometimes rest is required. Often fatigue is simply the voice of the undisciplined self requesting escape. Learn to tell the difference. The not enough time excuse. This weapon is deployed constantly. You should work on the important project, but you do not have enough time right now. You should exercise, but your schedule is too full. You should pursue the goal, but time is insufficient. And you accept this. You believe the lie that you have no time, when the truth is that you have exactly as much time as everyone else. 24 hours. The same as the people who accomplish what you cannot. Time is not the problem. Priorities are the problem. And the not enough time excuse hides your true priorities from yourself. When this excuse appears, ask a different question. Not do I have time? Instead, is this important enough to make time for? If yes, then the time exists. It exists in the hours you spend on entertainment, in the minutes you waste on distraction, in the schedule slots you give to low-priority activities. Time exists. The excuse claims otherwise to protect those low-priority uses from examination. The conditions are not right excuse. This weapon requires perfect circumstances before action is permitted. You would start the business, but the economy is uncertain. You would begin the project, but you need more information first. You would pursue the goal, but you are waiting for the right moment. And that right moment never comes. Because there is no right moment. Because conditions are never perfect. Because waiting for ideal circumstances is waiting forever. The excuse knows this. The excuse is designed to create permanent delay through perpetually unmet conditions. The soldier does not wait for perfect conditions. The soldier operates in the conditions that exist. The mission does not pause for circumstances to improve. The mission is executed despite imperfect circumstances. And somehow, execution in imperfect conditions produces results, while waiting for perfect conditions produces nothing. The I will start tomorrow excuse. This is perhaps the most destructive weapon. It grants permission to fail today by promising success tomorrow. You do not have to act now. Tomorrow you will begin. Tomorrow you will be disciplined. Tomorrow you will be different. And tomorrow comes and the excuse reloads. You do not have to act now. Tomorrow you will begin. The cycle repeats infinitely. Action is always tomorrow. Failure is always today. And the undisciplined self wins every day through the simple promise of a tomorrow that never performs differently than today. That is the key. Tomorrow is a lie you tell yourself to make today's failure acceptable. But tomorrow does not exist. Only today exists. Only now exists. The person you will be tomorrow is determined by what you do today. And if what you do today is accept the tomorrow excuse, then what you do tomorrow is accept the tomorrow excuse again. The pattern perpetuates. The action never happens. The excuse wins forever. You have a choice. Continue accepting these excuses as valid and remain permanently inactive, or recognize each excuse as an attack and develop the response that defeats it. The response is not complex. The response is simple. But simple is not easy. Simple requires discipline. Simple requires the soldier mind. Here is the excuse elimination protocol. When an excuse arises, do not evaluate its validity. This is counterintuitive. You want to assess whether the excuse is legitimate. But this evaluation is the trap, because your undisciplined self crafts excuses that seem legitimate. The evaluation process is where you lose. The more you consider the excuse, the more reasonable it seems. The more you debate, the more likely you accept. Instead, recognize the excuse as an attack and reject it without negotiation. The excuse appears. You identify it as an excuse. You act anyway. There is no debate. There is no consideration of whether this particular excuse might be valid. The excuse is an enemy operation. Enemy operations are not negotiated with. They're defeated through action. This seems extreme. This seems to ignore that some excuses are actually valid. Sometimes you genuinely are too exhausted. Sometimes you genuinely do not have time. Sometimes conditions genuinely make action impossible. And this is true. Sometimes the excuse is accurate. But here is what you must understand. The cost of occasionally acting when rest was actually needed is far less than the cost of consistently accepting excuses when action was actually required. The asymmetry matters. If you reject an excuse that was actually valid, the consequence is some unnecessary effort, some action that perhaps should have been delayed. This cost is real but small. But if you accept an excuse that was actually invalid, the consequence is failed goals, broken commitments, unrealized potential, accumulated defeat. This cost is enormous. Given the asymmetry, the correct policy is to err toward rejection, to default to action, to require overwhelming evidence before accepting any excuse. That is the key. Default to action. Require overwhelming evidence before accepting any excuse. This policy will sometimes produce unnecessary effort, but it will far more often produce necessary effort that excuses would have prevented. The net result is massive progress compared to the default accept policy most people operate with. It is not about being blind to genuine limitations. It is not about ignoring real constraints. It is about recognizing that your mind is not a neutral evaluator of excuses. Your mind has a vested interest in excuse acceptance. Your undisciplined self wants excuses to work, and a biased evaluator cannot be trusted to evaluate fairly. So you do not evaluate. You act. And if action proves truly impossible, that becomes evident. But most often, action proves possible, and the excuse is revealed as the lie it was. Here is what happens when you stop accepting excuses. First, you discover that most excuses were false. The tiredness that seemed to require rest evaporates once action begins. The time that seemed insufficient proves adequate once priorities shift. The conditions that seemed wrong prove workable once commitment is made. The excuses that seemed so valid prove to be illusions that dissolve upon contact with action. Second, you accomplish what you could not accomplish before. The goals that excuse acceptance prevented become achievable when excuses are rejected. The projects that never started get started. The efforts that always stop continue. The results that never materialized begin to materialize. Not because anything external changed, because you stopped accepting the internal sabotage that was preventing progress. Third, your identity shifts. You become someone who acts rather than someone who excuses. Someone who executes rather than someone who explains why execution is impossible. This identity shift is profound. It affects everything: how you see yourself, how others see you, what you believe is possible, what you are willing to attempt. The excuse rejector operates in a different reality than the excuse acceptor, a reality with more possibility, more capability, more achievement. You have a choice. Every time an excuse arises, you have a choice. Accept and remain stuck, or reject and move forward. The excuse will seem reasonable. The excuse will seem valid. The excuse will seem like wisdom recommending necessary retreat. But you now know what excuses actually are: weapons, enemy intelligence deployed against you. And you can choose not to be defeated by your own mind. Consider the cost of excuse acceptance across your life. Every excuse accepted was progress prevented. Every justification believed was action avoided. Every valid-seeming reason was sabotage that succeeded. The accumulated cost is your unrealized potential. The gap between who you are and who you could have been. That gap was created by excuses you accepted, and it will continue widening as long as you continue accepting. Here is what the soldier understands that the civilian does not. The mission does not care about your excuses. The objective does not adjust based on your justifications. Results are not impressed by your valid reasons for not producing them. The world responds to action, not to explanation, to execution, not to excuse. And all the brilliant justifications in the world produce exactly nothing compared to one moment of disciplined action. The civilian crafts excuses and presents them proudly, as if valid reasons for failure are valuable, as if explaining why you did not succeed is the same as succeeding. But it is not. Excuses produce nothing. Action produces results. And the choice between excuses and action is the choice between nothing and something, between failure with explanation and success without need for explanation. That is the key. Your excuses are not reasons. They are weapons used against you. See them clearly. Reject them consistently. Act despite them persistently. And watch what happens when the enemy's primary weapon no longer works. Watch what becomes possible when sabotage fails. Watch who you become when you stop accepting your own excuses and start demanding your own action. You learn that excuses are enemy intelligence. You learn to reject them without negotiation. You learn that action defeats what debate reinforces. But all this rejection, all this action, all this defeat of excuses must serve something, must point towards something. The soldier acts not for action's sake, but for the mission. And you must learn to operate the same way. Chapter 9. Mission first, feelings last. You operate backwards. You wait until you feel like acting before you act. You wait until motivation arrives before you move. You wait until emotions align with objectives before you pursue objectives. And this backwards operation is why you accomplish so little. Because feelings rarely align with what must be done. Motivation rarely arrives when action is required. Emotions rarely support the difficult work that meaningful achievement demands. You're waiting for conditions that almost never occur. And while you wait, nothing happens. Here is what you need to understand. Soldiers do not operate based on feelings. They operate based on the mission. The objective determines action, not the emotional state, not the motivation level, not whether they feel like doing what must be done. The mission exists independent of feelings. The mission will be executed regardless of feelings. Feelings are noted. Feelings are not obeyed. The mission is what matters. The mission is what drives behavior. Everything else is noise. That is the key. What is the mission? Execute the mission. This is the complete decision framework. Not how do I feel about the mission. Not am I motivated to pursue the mission. Not do conditions favor the mission. Simply what is the mission and execute the mission. The simplicity is the power. The simplicity eliminates the negotiation, the debate, the excuse-making that feelings introduce. The mission is defined. The mission is executed. Feelings are irrelevant to this process. Think about how you currently operate. You have something you should do, a task, a project, a goal. What happens next? You check your feelings. Am I motivated? Do I feel like doing this? Is my energy sufficient? Is my mood conducive? And based on this emotional inventory, you decide whether to act. If feelings are favorable, you proceed. If feelings are unfavorable, you delay. The feelings determine the action. The emotions control the behavior. You are governed by internal weather you do not control. You have a choice. Continue letting feelings determine action and remain at the mercy of emotional states you cannot predict or control. Or adopt mission-first orientation and become someone who executes regardless of internal conditions. One path keeps you reactive. The other path makes you proactive. One path produces erratic results dependent on emotional weather. The other path produces consistent results independent of how you feel. Here is why feelings-first operation fails. Feelings are unreliable. They fluctuate based on factors you do not control. Sleep quality, blood sugar, hormonal cycles, social interactions, weather. Countless variables affect your emotional state. And if your action depends on your emotional state, your action becomes as unreliable as your emotions. Some days you feel motivated and you act. Most days you do not feel motivated and you do not act. The results are predictably inconsistent. Furthermore, feelings often oppose what must be done. The difficult task feels unpleasant. The challenging project feels overwhelming. The meaningful goal feels impossible. Your feelings about these things are negative precisely because they're difficult, and difficulty is required for achievement. So if you only act when feelings are positive, you only act when tasks are easy. And easy tasks do not produce meaningful results. That is the key. Your feelings will consistently oppose meaningful action because meaningful action is difficult. Waiting for feelings to support difficult action is waiting for something that rarely happens. The feelings-first person accomplishes easy things when motivation happens to align. The mission-first person accomplishes difficult things regardless of whether motivation ever arrives. It is not about ignoring feelings completely. It is not about pretending you have no emotions. It is about changing the order of operations. Feelings last, not feelings first. The mission determines action. Then feelings are noted. Then action proceeds regardless of what the feelings recommended. The feelings have a voice. The feelings do not have a vote. Here is how to define missions clearly. Most people fail at mission-first operation because they have no clear missions. They have vague intentions. They have general desires. They have fuzzy goals. But they do not have missions. And you cannot execute what is not defined. You cannot accomplish what is not specified. Vague missions produce vague results. Clear missions produce clear results. A mission has specific characteristics. It is concrete rather than abstract. Now I want to be healthier. Instead, I will complete 30 minutes of physical training at 6 a.m. The specificity enables execution. The concreteness allows assessment. Either you completed 30 minutes at 6 a.m. or you did not. There is no ambiguity, no interpretation, no escape through vagueness. A mission is time-bound. Not I will eventually finish the project. Instead, I will complete the first section by noon today. The deadline creates urgency. The time boundary prevents infinite delay. The mission must be executed within a specific window. This constraint focuses action. A mission is within your control. Not I will make them agree with me. Instead, I will present my case clearly and completely. You cannot control others. You cannot guarantee outcomes that depend on external factors. But you can control your own actions. Missions focus on what you can actually execute. You have a choice. Continue operating with vague intentions and remain unable to execute clearly, or define specific missions and discover the power of clarity. The definition requires effort, requires thought, requires discipline to transform fuzzy desires into concrete objectives. But the result is executability. The result is the ability to actually accomplish what you intend. Here is the daily mission protocol. Each morning, before engaging with the world, you define the day's missions. Not a long list of everything you might do. A short list of what must be done. 3 to 5 missions maximum. The critical objectives that will constitute victory when you review this day tonight. Each mission is specific, concrete, time-bound where appropriate, within your control, written down, not held vaguely in mind where it can morph and escape, written clearly where it can be referenced and assessed. Then you execute, one mission at a time, not simultaneously, sequentially. The first mission receives full attention until complete. Then the second, then the third. Each mission executed without regard for feelings, without waiting for motivation, without checking whether emotional conditions are favorable. The mission is defined. The mission is executed. That is the entire process. At day's end, you review. Which missions were completed? Which were not? What prevented completion? Was it genuine impossibility, or was it feelings interfering with execution? The review provides intelligence for tomorrow, identifies patterns, reveals where feelings are still controlling behavior despite mission-first intention. That is the key. Mission definition, mission execution, mission review. This cycle, repeated daily, installs a mission-first orientation, makes it habitual, makes it automatic. Eventually, you stop checking feelings before acting. You simply check the mission list and execute. The transformation is complete when execution no longer requires overriding feelings. When execution is simply what you do, consider what mission-first operation makes possible. The project that feelings would perpetually delay gets completed because the mission is defined and executed regardless of feelings. The goal that motivation would never support gets achieved because achievement does not require motivation. The life that emotional dependency would prevent gets lived because living well is the mission and the mission is executed. Here is what happens when feelings are allowed to come last. They often change. You do not feel like exercising. The mission is exercise. You begin exercising anyway. 5 minutes in, the feelings shift. The resistance fades. The energy appears. The mood improves. The feelings that opposed action before action began support action once action starts. This happens consistently. The feelings that seem like reliable indicators of what you should do are often completely wrong about what you will feel once you begin. The civilian waits for feelings to support action. The soldier acts and allows feelings to catch up. The civilian never discovers that feelings change because action never begins. The soldier consistently discovers that initial resistance dissolves once execution starts. This discovery reinforces mission-first operation, proves that feelings before action are unreliable predictors of feelings during action. It is not about dismissing emotions as meaningless. Emotions provide information. Emotions matter for well-being. But emotions are not reliable guides for action. They oppose what is difficult. They support what is easy. They fluctuate unpredictably. They often reverse once action begins. Using emotions as the basis for action decisions produces decisions that serve emotional comfort rather than meaningful achievement. You have a choice. Continue using feelings as the basis for action and remain comfortable but unaccomplished. Or use missions as the basis for action and become uncomfortable sometimes but accomplished consistently. The feelings-first path feels better moment to moment. The mission-first path produces results that matter. Choose which outcome you want, then operate accordingly. Here is the mindset that supports mission-first operation. You're a soldier. You have been given orders. The orders came from your commanding self. The self that knows what must be done. The self that sees clearly when emotions are not clouding vision. That self issued missions. Clear missions. Specific missions. And now the executing self must carry out those missions. Not debate them. Not reconsider them. Not check whether feelings have changed about them. Execute them. This separation between commanding self and executing self is powerful. The commanding self operates during planning, during mission definition, during clear-headed assessment of what matters. The executing self operates during action, during implementation, during the work itself. And the executing self does not second-guess the commanding self, does not renegotiate what was decided, does not use current feelings to overrule previous clarity. The civilian has no such separation. The civilian lets whatever self happens to be present make all decisions. The planning self makes a commitment. The tired self breaks it. The clear-headed self defines a mission. The emotional self abandons it. There is no hierarchy. There is no authority. Whoever shows up decides. And whoever shows up is often not the self equipped to decide well. That is the key. Separate command from execution. Let your best self define missions. Let your executing self carry them out without renegotiation. This separation protects good decisions from bad moods, protects important missions from momentary feelings, protects long-term objectives from short-term emotional weather. Consider the soldier receiving orders. The soldier may have feelings about those orders, may think the mission is difficult, may wish the mission were different, may feel the mission is unreasonable. But the soldier executes anyway, because orders are not about feelings. Orders are about objectives, and the objective must be achieved regardless of how anyone feels about achieving it. You are both the commander and the soldier. You issue your own orders. You execute your own orders. And the integrity of this system depends on the executing self honoring what the commanding self decided, without renegotiation, without excuse, without using feelings as justification for disobedience. Here is what mission-first operation ultimately produces: reliability. You become someone who does what they say, someone who executes what they intend, someone whose commitments mean something. This reliability changes everything. Changes how you see yourself. Changes how others see you. Changes what becomes possible. The feelings first person is unreliable. They might act or might not, depending on emotional weather. Commitments are conditional on feeling like honoring them. Goals are pursued until pursuit feels unpleasant. Nothing can be built on this foundation. Nothing meaningful can be accomplished by someone this unreliable. The mission-first person is reliable. They will act regardless of emotional weather. Commitments are honored because commitments were made. Goals are pursued until achieved regardless of how pursuit feels. Everything can be built on this foundation. Everything meaningful becomes possible when someone this reliable pursues it. You have a choice. Be unreliable and accomplish little, or be reliable and accomplish much. The choice is made not once, but daily. In every moment when feelings recommend one path and the mission requires another. In those moments, you choose who you are. You choose reliability or unreliability. You choose mission first or feelings first. You learned that the mission determines action, not feelings. You learn to define missions clearly. You learn to execute without emotional permission. You learn to separate command from execution. But all of this learning must now integrate into who you are. Must become not what you do, but who you are. The final transformation awaits. Chapter 10. Become the soldier you were meant to be. You have learned 9 principles, 9 chapters of mental discipline, 9 ways to train your mind like a soldier. But learning is not becoming. Understanding is not transformation. You can memorize every principle in this audiobook and remain exactly as soft, as undisciplined, as civilian as you were when you started. Because information does not change identity. Only integration changes identity. Only implementation transforms who you are. And that is what this final chapter demands. Not one more concept to understand. A complete transformation to undertake. The soldier you were meant to be is waiting. The question is whether you will become that soldier or just admire the idea from a distance. Here is what you need to understand. The final integration happens when discipline stops being something you practice and becomes something you are. When you no longer decide to override feelings. When override is simply how you operate. When you no longer remind yourself that the mission comes first. When mission first is simply your orientation. When every principle we have discussed becomes not a practice, but an identity, that is the transformation point. That is when the civilian dies and the soldier emerges. That is when you become unstoppable. That is the key. You are not a civilian anymore. This declaration is not metaphor. This declaration is identity shift. The civilian mind that has controlled you, that has kept you soft, that has sabotaged your every attempt at discipline, that mind is no longer in command. The soldier mind has taken over, and the soldier mind operates differently, thinks differently, responds differently, lives differently. Think about everything you have learned. The civilian mind is killing your potential through softness and comfort seeking. Your feelings are not commands that must be obeyed. Discipline is a daily war that must be won every morning. Your self-commands are orders that are not optional. Comfort is the enemy of capability and must be strategically resisted. Focus is a weapon that must be trained and deployed. Pain is information that must be evaluated, not instruction that must be followed. Excuses are enemy intelligence being used against you. The mission determines action, not your feelings about the mission. These are not just ideas. These are operational principles. Principles that must govern how you think, decide, and act. Every day, in every situation, until operating by these principles is no longer effort. Until it is simply who you are, you have a choice. Return to civilian operation after this audiobook ends. Let the principles fade. Let the softness return. Let the old patterns reassert themselves. Or commit to permanent transformation. Install the soldier mind so completely that civilian thinking becomes foreign, becomes impossible, becomes something you used to do before you became who you are now. Here is the daily battle rhythm that implements everything. This is not theory. This is the operational schedule that makes transformation real. The night before, you prepare tomorrow's battlefield. You define tomorrow's missions. Specific, concrete, time-bound where appropriate. You write them down. You lay out what you need for morning execution. You eliminate friction from the disciplined path. You add friction to the undisciplined path. You go to sleep having already decided what tomorrow requires. The commanding self has issued orders. The executing self will carry them out. The morning, the alarm sounds. This is the first battle. You do not negotiate. You do not consider how you feel. You move. Immediately. Feet on floor. Body upright. The battle is won before the civilian mind can mount resistance. Physical activation follows. Cold water, movement, exercise if possible. The body leads the mind into readiness. Then mission review. What did the commanding self decide yesterday? What must be executed today? The missions are clear. The execution begins. Throughout the day, you execute missions sequentially, one at a time. Full focus until completion. When feelings resist, you note the resistance and continue anyway. When excuses arise, you recognize them as enemy operations and reject them without negotiation. When discomfort appears, you evaluate whether it is damage or growth sensation. If growth, you continue. If damage, you adjust appropriately. The soldier mind is in command. Every decision is filtered through training. The evening, you review the day's battles. Which missions were completed? Which were not? Where did the soldier mind prevail? Where did civilian thinking infiltrate? What triggered the infiltration? What can be done differently tomorrow? This review is not self-judgment. This review is intelligence gathering. Understanding today improves tomorrow. You prepare the next day's missions. You prepare the next day's battlefield. The cycle continues. That is the key. The battle rhythm makes discipline systematic rather than heroic. You are not relying on willpower. You are relying on systems, on protocols, on established patterns that execute automatically. The soldier does not wake up each day deciding whether to be disciplined. The soldier wakes up and executes the battle rhythm because that is what soldiers do. The rhythm is the discipline. The rhythm is the transformation. It is not about perfection. You will have days where civilian thinking wins battles. Days where you hit snooze. Days where excuses succeed. Days where feelings override missions. These days will happen. They do not mean failure. They mean you are human. They mean the war continues. The question is not whether you ever lose a battle. The question is whether you keep fighting the war. Whether you return to the battle rhythm after defeat. Whether you treat setbacks as reasons to quit or reasons to recommit. Here is what the complete transformation looks like. You wake before you want to. Not because you feel like rising. Because rising is the order. You train when training is scheduled. Not because motivation appeared. Because training is the mission. You work with full focus. Not because concentration is easy. Because focus is a weapon and you wield it deliberately. You push through discomfort. Not because pain feels good. Because discomfort is often the sensation of growth. You reject excuses automatically. Not because you never feel tired or busy or unprepared. Because you recognize these feelings as potential weapons and refuse to let them determine action. You execute missions regardless of emotional state. Not because you have no emotions. Because emotions inform without commanding. You maintain this operation daily. Not because discipline ever becomes effortless. Because you are a soldier and soldiers fight daily. You have a choice. Commit to this transformation fully and become someone you currently cannot imagine. Or commit partially and return to who you have always been. Partial commitment produces partial results, which produces discouragement, which produces abandonment, which produces return to civilian softness. The only path to transformation is full commitment, complete adoption of the soldier mind, total rejection of the civilian mind that has controlled you until now. Consider what is at stake. Your potential, your capability, your chance to become who you could actually be. The civilian mind has been stealing this from you your entire life. Through softness, through excuse acceptance, through feelings first operation, through comfort addiction, through scattered focus, through pain avoidance, through all the patterns we have exposed across 9 chapters. Every day you remain civilian is another day of potential stolen. Another day of capability undeveloped. Another day of the life you could have lived unlived. The soldier mind offers something different. Not an easy life, a capable life. Not comfort, competence. Not the absence of struggle, the ability to prevail in struggle. Not feeling good all the time, being good when it matters. This is what the soldier mind produces. This is what transformation makes available. This is what waits on the other side of the choice you must make. Here is the challenge issued. Tomorrow morning, the alarm will sound. That moment is the test. Everything you have learned comes down to that single moment. Will you negotiate like a civilian or execute like a soldier? Will you check your feelings or check your mission? Will you hit snooze or hit the ground? That single decision sets the trajectory. Win that battle, and the day begins with momentum. Lose that battle, and the day begins with defeat. The soldier you become or fail to become is determined in moments exactly like that one. Moments where civilian thinking offers comfort and soldier thinking demands discipline. The choice you make in those moments is the choice that makes you. You have everything you need. The principles, the protocols, the battle rhythm, the understanding of how the civilian mind operates and how to defeat it. What remains is execution. What remains is the daily war. What remains is becoming who you have learned to be. This is not the end. This is the beginning of the war you will fight every day for the rest of your life. The war for your own mind. The war against the softness that wants to return. The war for the capability that discipline creates. You now know how to fight this war. You now have a training. What you do with that training determines everything. Stop living like a civilian. You have lived that way long enough. You have seen what it produces. Softness, weakness, unrealized potential, abandoned goals, a life smaller than it should have been. Start living like a soldier. Start today. Start with the next decision you make. Start with the next moment where feelings recommend comfort and the mission requires discipline. In that moment, choose. Choose the soldier. Choose the mission. Choose capability over comfort. Choose who you could be over who you have been. The civilian mind will fight back. It will tell you this is extreme. It will tell you balance is important. It will tell you self-compassion means accepting your weaknesses. It will tell you anything to regain control. Recognize these arguments as the enemy's final assault. The civilian mind fighting for survival. Do not negotiate. Do not debate. Execute. You're not a civilian anymore. Say it. Believe it. Become it. The soldier you are meant to be is not someone else. It is you. The you that exists when discipline defeats softness. When mission defeats feelings. When execution defeats excuses. That soldier has always been inside you. Buried under civilian conditioning. Hidden beneath years of comfort seeking. Waiting to emerge. This audiobook has given you the map, the principles to follow, the protocols to implement, the battle rhythm to execute. But no map walks the territory for you. You must walk it yourself, step by step, day by day, battle by battle, until the walking becomes natural, until the soldier becomes identity, until you cannot remember what it felt like to be civilian because you have been soldier for so long. The war begins now, not tomorrow. Now, the next decision you make, the next moment where discipline and softness compete. That is the first battle of your new life. Win it, then win the next one, then the next, until winning is what you do, until discipline is who you are, until the soldier you were meant to be is the soldier you have become. Report for duty. The war is waiting, and you are ready. You have just learned 10 principles of mental discipline, 10 ways to train your mind like a soldier. You have learned that the civilian mind is killing you, that your feelings are not commands. That discipline is a daily war you must win every day. You learn that your self-commands are orders that must be executed. That comfort is destroying everything you desire. That focus is your primary weapon. You learn that pain is information, not instruction. that excuses are enemy information being used against you, that the mission comes first and feelings last, and you learned how to become the soldier you should be. But here's what matters now. None of this helps if you don't put it into practice. None of this has the power to transform you if you just listen and do nothing. The civilian remains comfortable. The civilian nods and then returns to their softness. The soldier acts. The soldier implements. The soldier executes, regardless of how they feel. Tomorrow morning, the alarm will go off. That moment is the first battle. Will you get up immediately like a soldier, or will you negotiate with yourself like a civilian? That single decision sets the trajectory for the entire day. Win that battle, and the momentum is yours. Lose that battle, and you've already proven that nothing has changed. You have the knowledge. You have the principles. You have the protocols. What you do with them determines whether you remain a civilian or become a warrior. Stop living soft. Stop obeying feelings. Stop making excuses. Stop prioritizing comfort. Start training your mind like a soldier. Start thinking like a warrior. Start executing like your mission depends on it. Because it does. Your entire life depends on it. Report for duty. Starting now.